Hello there guys, RMP792 here. We're up to Season 2, Episode 8 of Discovery, and I'm recording this one quite early, relatively speaking, because I'm going to go see Captain Marvel later today. So there's that. You'll get my thoughts on that tomorrow. But for now, this was a pretty good episode of Discovery. Well done. As I've said, a lot of my problems with this season have been pacing related, or to be more exact, they've had a bad habit this season of spreading themselves too thin. The good episodes this season have been the one that have had one primary plot line and have focused on it, and then have had smaller bits for the ongoing stuff. You know, so like the one on Saru's homeworld was almost entirely about that story, with just little bits of the ongoing plot. And that was the case here. This was primarily focused on Michael taking Spock to Talos IV, the fallout from that, including Pike dealing with what happened to him back there, and setting up what is going to be going on for the rest of the season. And the subplot was in relation to Culver being brought back from the dead, and him finally actually confronting Ash over the fact that he murdered him. And again, that was only a couple of scenes, but they were good scenes that tied into the overarching plot without detracting from the rest of the episode. So, much better job in this episode, guys. As I say, I felt the last one was stretched a bit too thin. This one was focused on what it needed to be focused on, which, ultimately that is what needed to happen, and I'm glad it did. So, I kind of simultaneously love and hate the way this episode begins. Namely, it begins with previously on Star Trek, meaning it actually shows us footage from the cage. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely get why that was there. Not everybody has seen the cage. Not everybody is as big a sci-fi nerd as me, or a Star Trek nerd in particular. To hear the name Talos IV and immediately know what was going on and why they were going there and everything else. So that was there for a reason. Was it just me, or was the transition-y floating around stuff really, really stupid and unnecessary? You could have just shown us the clips, guys. You didn't need to show off your skills with Adobe Premiere or whatever the hell you use to edit. That reminded me of when we were at school and we had to do a PowerPoint presentation and everybody put like 4 million transitions on because we thought they were cool because we were kids. It's the exact same sort of thing. But so the primary focus of the episode is basically Burnham and Spock go to Telos, and when they arrive, it looks like a black hole because that's what the Telosians do. The Telosians, they cannot actually hurt you directly. They're not strictly speaking pacifists, but they kind of got past violence in a way that they've evolved to the point where it's not so much evolution, because again, it was a nuclear war that completely bollocked up their civilization. So it could just be that they decided, no, we're not going to, we're not going to let that happen again. So they moved away from violence, and eventually that reached the point where they're no longer sort of capable of it. Because in the original cage, the way that you can screw over their telepathy is with pure, naked, aggressive thoughts. Captain Pike, for example, at one point gets sufficiently angry with one of them that he pretty much dives at it and tries to throttle it. And despite its telepathic abilities, it doesn't see the move coming because it physically, it can't understand raw, aggressive emotion that enough. So that basically blinds their telepathy temporarily. So that's sort of how you get past it, which is not very subtle, but hey, it works. So Michael attempts to break off from landing on the planet, and Spock's just like, no, it's a trick, we can land. And they eventually do. They've definitely boosted the power of the Telosians a bit. Insofar as, I can't remember if in the cage they were able to reach orbit. It's implied they probably were, given that nobody on the... Again, in the cage, there's a bit where they're trying to get access to the Telosians' base. And they do it by effectively trying to blow open a door that's built into the side of a mountain. And they put so much phaser power into it that they literally shear the top right off the mountain. and nobody on the Enterprise calls down to say, guys, you've blown the top off that mountain, right? Everybody, I think, even up on the Enterprise, still thinks the mountain is there. So I'm assuming that they can't reach orbit. There is a scene later in this where they transmit across quite a few light years, but they only do that to Pike, so I'm assuming that's because there's some sort of lingering telepathic connection, and they do state that, the further away you are, the it gets exponentially harder. So I'll let them have it. But yeah, so as I figured, Spock basically needs the Talosians' help to unbollock up his brain, basically, because it transpires that the Red Angel visited him as a child and showed him Michael getting killed. So he told his parents. They went and found her and saved her, and he thought it was some sort of dream, or he was a kid. He didn't know what the hell it was. And then when he sees it again as an adult, he does what Spock does. He attempts to mind meld with it. And again, it's clearly we now know, according to Spock, that it's a human in some sort of suit. And my money is still on it transpiring it to be somebody we know. So I suspect we're dealing with either a returning character or it's going to be Michael. Which I can see them doing that. I hope they don't. But we will have to see. I mean, potential recurring characters. Who would I want it to be? Who could it be? I was like, I could see it being somebody like 7 of 9, for example, from Voyager. Because she has had experience, protecting time effectively from because she's the one who keeps getting recruited by the 29th century Starfleet in relativity, which I've talked about before in these vlogs. There's a few other people I could see it being. Pretty much any of the Star Trek primary actors who are still working as actors. It could be any of them. Heck, they could have talked somebody into turning up again. We don't know. We haven't heard any rumours of previous Star Trek actors being on the set, but that doesn't necessarily rule it out because they can be quite good about keeping their mouths shut sometimes. So we'll have to say that my theory, as I would quite like it to be either a recurring character or somebody we'd never seen before. What it's probably going to be is somebody from Discovery, so probably Michael, maybe Stamets. Again, Stamets has the whole weird alien DNA allowing him to see time differently, so that might allow him to survive the process, and hop around the timeline. That's a distinct possibility as well. So when Spock mind melds with it, he basically sees some sort of spacecraft of unrecognized design firing what looked to be a bunch of torpedoes which travel to various planets and blow them the hell up. And the first planet was clearly Earth. The second planet was Vulcan. I wasn't too sure about the other two. I thought the third one might be Saru's homeworld. But then Michael explicitly lists one of them as being Andoria. So I think the third one was Andoria, which would most likely make the fourth one Tella, i.e. the home of the Tellarites. I.e. those 4 planets are the 4 homeworlds of the 4 founding members of the Federation: humans, Vulcans, Andorians, and Tellarites. Which is kind of symbolic and kind of interesting. And they claim that this thing is some sort of threat to all life in the galaxy. And starting by wiping out the Federation is an obvious first step in that. If you're going to start in this part of the galaxy, if you want to start in the Gamma Quadrant, the Dominion's already pretty big and pretty powerful over there. Over in the Delta Quadrant, the Borg they're not, they're nowhere near at the level they are by the TNG era, but they're well on their way to being, a fully established, growing, scary-ass empire. We don't know that much about the Beta Quadrant, relatively speaking. We know the Romulans have a fair bit of space in there, but we don't know really what's past them. We know that there's effectively a sort of area that there isn't too much stuff in, and the Romulans haven't really bothered expanding into for whatever reason, presumably because there's just not that many habitable planets or something like that, so they've been pushing in the other direction, towards humanity. Humanity and the Klingon Empire and all the stuff in the Alpha Quadrant. So we don't really know. You could do some interesting stuff there, but yeah. So I'm standing by my previous theory. This is somebody attempting to manipulate time in order to destroy the Federation, and the Red Angel is attempting to stop them. So yeah, that's pretty much all we really learn about the ongoing plot. A lot of the focus of this episode is giving the actor playing Spock a chance to actually play Spock rather than some dribbling madman called Spock. And I actually quite like this actor. I really wasn't sure in the previous episode because, as I said, he doesn't have a chance to do much in that episode. Whereas here, he gets to say some Spockish things. He gets to act fairly well. And yeah, I wasn't sure, but yeah, I quite like him. He's doing a pretty good job. I pity anybody who has to follow Leonard Nimoy, but they've done a pretty good job on the casting here. Same way they did Anson Mount is I like him as Pike. He's a good Pike. So they've done a good job on the casting here. And one of the comments from a friend of mine who I was talking about this with was, he feels a little stiff at the moment. Because Spock could be actually quite laid back sometimes. But my response to that was, he spends most of the episode with Michael, and he clearly kind of hates Michael because of the fact that she effectively pushed him away from his human side when he was young, and he clearly never really got over that. Which again, it's retconning the Spock's backstory, which I'm not a fan of, but for what they're doing in the context of Discovery, it works okay, so I'll let them get away with it. But yeah, so while he's around her, he's incredibly uptight. Once he gets back to the ship and he's talking to Pike, you notice he loosens up a bit, and there's even a little bit of a smile. And again, we do see in the cage that Spock sees one of the pretty blue flowers and smiles about it. So my assumption is that during this period of time, he's not got quite the same clamp down on his emotions that he does later, which again makes sense. As he gets older and more mature, he gets better at it. So the occasional bit of emotion slips through when he's this young, because again, he's only a lieutenant at this point. So this is long before he becomes Commander Spock, which he is in the original TOS. So that makes a certain amount of sense. So I'm okay with that. And the other bit of this episode is, of course, we get to see Vina again, which is really interesting because it gives Pike and Vina a chance for a certain amount of closure that they never got in TOS. As she said, the Telosians created effectively a fake Pike for her, and presumably at some point she stopped using it because she couldn't take the fact that she knew it was a fake. And the fact that she is quite horribly deformed because, again, when the Telosians saved her life, they didn't know what a human was supposed to look like, so they just kind of guessed. And she chooses to live an illusion where she is, a beautiful young woman, rather than somebody who's deformed and has difficulty getting around. And as she said, the illusion feels like the real her, and there's some really interesting symbolism you could go into there. Discovery didn't really seem like it was interested in exploring the potential ramifications of that idea, because there are a lot. Speaking as somebody who's purely an outsider on this issue, I'm going to turn the commenter. If it wasn't for the fact that I trust all you people to be lovely commenters, I'd be scared about saying this next sentence, but it feels like somewhere in there, with the right writing team, you could make a really interesting metaphor for a transgender person in there. As in somebody, living with an illusion because that, feels like the real them rather than what they actually are. You know what I mean? It's letting their true self out because they, and choosing to live something that is a deeper truth rather than the reality of what they're born with. Again, I feel like there's something there that I am in no way qualified to talk about, and there are much better, more interesting people who could comment on this that are not me. So that was just something that I kind of, I feel like there's a metaphor in there, but I don't think it was on purpose. That's just something I vaguely took away from it. So if you let me know, was I the only one who thought that? Am I talking absolute crap, or did somebody else feel like there was something in there? In the same way that in the first, in some of the early drafts of The Matrix, for example, the character of Switch was meant to be played by, I think it was the actress who actually plays her in the film, and in the real world was supposed to be played by a bloke. And they were deliberately going to have very similar, slightly androgynous designs to their hair and makeup and things, so that you could still tell it was meant to be the same character, and it was meant to be the true internal self-image projected into the Matrix, and their actual body outside. And they ended up not doing that, but that it's the same sort of vibe I was getting here, where it's the difference between who you choose to be, because it's the difference between who you're born as and who you choose to be, I think, is the best way to describe it. And yeah, I'm going to move on from that because, again, I'm not qualified to talk about that. That was just something I kind of took away from that. But yeah, so Pike and Vina are actually getting a chance to kind of talk about things I found very interesting. I'm glad they did something with that, even if it was only relatively minor stuff. And then, because of course, again, if you've seen TOS and you've seen the Menagerie, you know that Pike eventually does end up on Talos IV with her. And again, he's completely crippled at that point, but with her and with the Talosians, he can live a life as if he has a real functioning body again, because his brain is fine, but he's utterly crippled and confined. So there is some interesting symbolism and some imagery going on with the Talosians that that you could explore, but I highly doubt they will. But yeah. Side note: I heard some people complain about the Talosians' makeup. I kind of liked it. Again, they've added a kind of forehead thingy here, which I don't think was necessary, because originally they were just basically dudes with pale skin and big brains. And I noticed they added a kind of glowy effect to their heads, which I don't think was strictly necessary, but Discovery does like its glowy things. I've noticed that quite a lot. So yeah, that was absolutely fine. The Talosians look fine. The actors playing them did pretty good jobs. They got the same ethereal dickishness, which we are likened to an amoeba next to them. Yada yada yada, all the usual. And then Section 31 turns up and basically demands Spock and Michael. So they hand them over. And I knew immediately that this was a trap. I knew that the people that had been beamed on board were Talosian mental projections. That was fairly obvious, but again, I'm okay with it because it was a sensible tactical option. It was the thing that made the most sense, which is why they did it. And the fact that, again, I suspect Giorgio knew immediately. Because, again, as she says, she's encountered the Talosians from her universe, and her solution was to just blow their whole planet up. Which is, again, a very Empress Giorgio solution to the problem. So again, she's deliberately screwing over the guy in charge. I can't remember his character name, but she's deliberately screwing him over because she wants his job. She wants to work her way up the hierarchy. Because again, she was the Empress. She's willing to be in a subordinate role for now. But yeah. And that basically means Discovery is... Because during this time, they contacted Pike and Discovery came to help them. except their spore drive wasn't working, which everybody assumed that was because Ash sabotaged it, and somebody's been sending communications out. And again, everybody thinks it's Ash. It's not. It's again, can't remember the character name. The sort of cybernetically enhanced one with the the sort of black and white checkered almost skin. You know the one I'm talking about, because she's been in some way influenced by the probe. Nah, it won't be. Anyway, sorry, I'm now moderately concerned that they're going to end up having the villains who want to blow up the Federation turn out to be the Borg or something like that. Which, yeah, no, don't do that. No. I know you're thinking about it, Discovery. Don't do it. No. But yeah, so she's clearly been. I suspect she's being influenced rather than outright controlled. So she'll do a thing and then not really realize she's done it. Rather than just outright operating as an agent for the bad guys. I suspect she's not consciously aware that anything's happened to her, because that's always the best kind of way to do this sort of thing. If your operative doesn't know they're an operative, they tend to be a lot more effective at hiding. So yes, they lock up Ash, and but that's after the sequence where he has a punch up. But I'll get to that in a minute. So the Discovery basically says, okay, so we're criminals now. We're on the run. Let's do this. And there is quite a nice scene where they've got I'm not going to force any of you to do this, and Demito just go, call some speed, Captain. And again. And they've established quite a good rapport with Pike. I am going to be sad to see Pike go, because he's not going to hang around past the end of this season, because he can't. He from a timeline point of view, he has to go back to captaining the Enterprise. But I have a theory that, or it's not necessarily a theory. It's something I sort of simultaneously want to happen and think, if it's going to happen, this is how it will happen. So I want the Enterprise to be more involved at the tail end of the season, because at least partially I want to see the Enterprise bridge again. So my theory is that the Enterprise will get sent to bring Discovery back, and then they'll obviously join up with them. That's what if they're going to do it, that's how they'll do it. And again, it'd be nice to see number one again, and see the Enterprise bridge and see the whole shebang. That would be pretty fun. But yeah, so that's pretty much where we leave off, and Discovery is now on the run from the rest of the Federation. So they've got to find out what the hell's going on and stop it themselves. And yeah, so that's the main thrust of the episode, and it's a good, solid story. It's enjoyable to watch. It's got some nice character moments, and it's pretty good. Again, the Spock, Michael being brother and sister continues to be the weakest aspect of it, because it's got a bit too much retconning in it. I'm never a fan of retconning as a story device. But at the same time, if you can get past that, it does work. The actors are selling it. It's just, again, I'm not a massive fan of the retcons. So we then, the other subplot of the episode is, again, Culver is now back from the dead, and he doesn't really feel like himself. So Stamets effectively is pushing too hard, trying to trying to get his friend and and the man he loves back, and Culver's not sure he is that man anymore. So Stamets goes to takes him to their quarters and makes him his favourite meal, and and his comment is, it just nothing tastes right anymore. And and again, it's like if somebody comes out of it's a more extreme version of basically if somebody comes out of a coma and everything seems to have changed, and it's a case of, has everything else changed, or have they changed, or what? And he eventually gets to the point where he sees Ash in a corridor. And then he basically goes to the mess hall, and he's there, and they get into a full-on confrontation, because he's trying to bring the Vogue side of Ash out, because he needs to confront the person who killed him. It's something he needs to do, and Ash is trying. It's blatantly obvious during that fight that Ash is not really fighting back. He does a lot of blocking. He attempts to get Culver into a couple of locks, but he's not aggressively attacking. He's purely on the defensive that entire fight, because again, he doesn't want to let that side of him out, and more importantly, he understands why Culver is pissed off with him and wants to beat the crap out of him. So he's generally not fighting back, and that's an interesting sequence. The interesting thing about that sequence, really, to me, is Saru basically you say no, let them do it, and then later he and Pike have a conversation about it, and Pike's comment is, "Would you have done that before your change?" So yeah, they're definitely changing Saru's character to make, and it's interesting what they're potentially doing with him. Again, I don't want to see Saru change too much because I like Saru, but I think what this change is going to do is make him a bit more confident, a little more aggressive, and I think they're basically going to do a storyline where he has to learn to kind of rein it in a little bit. So I suspect at some point fairly soon, so before the end of the season, he's going to do something a bit reckless, and it's going to either hurt him or more likely hurt somebody else. And he's going to have to learn that fear is a useful emotion in certain situations. It exists for a reason. But yeah, so that's the interesting bit. And then there's later a scene between Stamets and Culver, where Culver basically admits that they can't go back to what they had, and Stamets pushing for that. Is incredibly detrimental. It's not helping. It's making things worse. So they've effectively broken those two up, and what I suspect they're planning to do is basically have them eventually get back together, but they want to actually build the relationship up rather than have it be an established relationship that already exists. And I'm kind of fine with that. Because seeing a relationship build and grow is always interesting, and yeah, Star Trek needs more gay characters. They've been pushing for that since the 90s. There was like the planet of aliens who were all effectively monogendered and didn't reproduce sexually anymore, although they used to. And the original Pit and Riker and one of them basically end up falling for each other. And the original pitch for the episode would have had, the character that Riker falls for played by a guy, which was and Frakes was pushing for that. He thought it would be important from a representation point of view, and somewhere along the way, I don't know by who, that there's rumors that it was Rick Berman, but I don't know for certain. Somewhere along the way, that got vetoed, and they cast an actress and just gave her a very androgynous haircut. If you've ever seen the clip with somebody saying, "Commander, please tell me about your sexual organs," that's the episode I'm talking about. So yeah, and things like in Star Trek First Contact, the helmsman, crewman Hawk, who gets assimilated by the Borg while they're doing their spacewalk on the dish, he was originally scripted to be a gay man, and all the references to that fact got cut from the film. I don't know if they were cut before it was ever filmed, or if there were some bits filmed and they were just cut. But so Star Trek has not had a good history of gay representation, and I'm curious to see where their relationship goes. I really liked Stamets and Culver as a couple in season 1. They had some really nice, cute little scenes together, and I'd like to see them do something with that. But so overall, this was a good episode. I'm curious to see where we go from here, and yeah, I'm enjoying this season a lot more than the last. When it has problems, it tends to be because they're stretching the episodes too thin. They're trying to cram too much in and not give what's important time to breathe. And in this episode, they had the one primary plot, which was the Talos IV stuff, and the B plot, which was the Stamets, Culver, Ash thing going on, and it worked really well. So, well done, Discovery. This was a good episode. Keep it up. We've got, I think, about 5 more episodes in the season. I'm not 100%. Hang on. IMDb is your friend. So that was episode 8, and there are supposedly 14 in the season. So we're slightly more than halfway done now. And yeah, next one is apparently called oh, interesting. Sorry, I'm looking at episode titles. The next one is Project Daedalus, and then episode 10 is the Red Angels, which probably means that's the point at which we start finding out actual details. But yeah, so overall, I very much enjoyed this episode, and I hope they can keep it up for the second half of the season. So tune in tomorrow for my thoughts on Captain Marvel, and thank you very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.